You're listening to Women's Dream Enlightenment. Dream decoding, deep discussions, and spiritual stories of self-discovery to inspire your personal enlightened journey. I'm your host, Megan Mary, founder of Women's Dream Analysis. Let's bring in the light. Welcome. Today we have Kelle Sparta. She is a spiritual business coach and transformational shaman, specializing in working with the 100,000 people who are here to up-level the planet. She works with them on everything from very beginner level work to higher order advanced level work, teaching them how to share their message and mission with the world. Kelle has spent the last half century learning about metaphysics, psychic skills, personal growth, energy healing, spiritual practices, business, and more. She is the author of The Overachiever's Guide to Spiritual Awakening, the founder of the Spirit Guides School, and her Spirit Sherpa podcast is in the top 2% of podcasts worldwide. Welcome, Kelle.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And you and I were just catching up with old home week because it turns out we knew each other from before. So we were like, both of us were like, hey, wait a minute.
Yes. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Everything with divine timing.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have to say I really like the title of your book, The Overachiever's Guide to Spiritual Awakening, because anybody who knows me, I'm definitely an overachiever. So
pretty much everybody I've ever run into in spirituality is an overachiever.
Okay.
And so that's why it was like, yep, this is the appropriate thing. All my peeps are like, they've got a plan and a backup plan and a backup plan for their backup plan. And they get more done in a day than most people get done in a week, right? You know, it's crazy.
Yes, yeah. It's that quest. It's the quest for knowledge. And it's just never enough, it seems. But you have been on that road. You have been questing for knowledge for many, many years, and I'm excited for you to share your journey. The first question I want to ask you is the one that I ask everyone, and that is, what does enlightenment mean to you?
I have a definition of enlightenment, which is basically there is a pathway to enlightenment within each of us. And what we're looking to do is balance the masculine and the feminine, right? And so the masculine energy is from the heart chakra up, and it is the path of light. So in the yin yang, it would be the white, right? And then from the heart chakra down is the feminine path, which is great mystery. It's the black in the yin yang, right? And so the path from the heart chakra up is about stripping away, stripping away, stripping away, stripping away until you become nothing and you become one with everything. The feminine path is accept and receive without judgment, everything, until you become everything and you become one with everything. And the path of full enlightenment is to do both at the same time and have it not be a paradox.
That's a profound answer. And I like that. Yes. I was about to say there, you have to do both. You have to strip away everything, and you also have to accept to receive. And you can't receive unless you get rid of all that other stuff.
Yeah. The fun part is the transition from one to the other, because the path of the stripping away is a path of understanding. We do it all in our heads, right? It's, you know, I've got to pull this out. I've got to let this go, blah, 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 blah. The path of the feminine is about a beingness state. It's not a doingness state. The masculine is a doingness state. The feminine is a beingness. And since we're in a beingness state, we have to transition into experience, not understanding. And so generally when people come into the darkness, they're going looking for the light switch, trying to understand it. And it's like, no, that's not how this works here. It's about an embodied state of beingness. And so that transition can be a little challenging when people go through that.
Oh, absolutely. Any spiritual awakening is in itself very challenging. Hence this podcast, really to elevate all the women's journeys and where they have come on their way, what they endured, really, because it's a path that we all travel alone. So it's meant to help other people, women, resonate with what they're going through
Yeah.
and really understand that they're not alone in this process.
Well, that's a great place to be.
Yes, it's important. And why I
Yes.
was called to do this. So,
Yeah.
so on that subject, where did you begin in your journey? And what happened for you that really sparked that moment of knowing, that shift, that change that where you can't look back again and everything's different?
Yeah. So I started my journey a little differently than the average person. My mother said I was talking to ghosts in my crib. And so she had been psychic when she was a child. And so she had shut it down because she was afraid of it. And she never figured out how to turn it back on. And so she was absolutely dedicated to the idea that I would not do the same thing. And so she brought me up with Seth and Ram Dass and Abraham Hicks and J.C. Knight and countless others. She brought home Est, which was a kinder, not kinder, gentler version of the Landmark Forum when I was 6 years old. And so I was just steeped in all of this stuff. I was doing self hypnosis by the time I was 10. I was reading tarot cards by the time I was 12. I really was just, it was in my bones by that time, right? And so people say, well, how long have you been doing coaching? And I'm like, well, I have high school yearbook signatures that read like client testimonials. So it's not really what I do, it's who I am, right? But there was a time, so I got married very young at 21, which I thought was a long time that I waited because it was my third proposal. And I was like, and I turned down the first two and thought I was being very mature. And then said yes at the third one. And I was like, it was still 21. But I got married at 21 to an atheist. And so we just stopped talking about it. And, I still had my own beliefs and whatever, but I got very busy with life. And so, for about 7 years of that marriage, aside from trying to figure out how to fix our marriage because it was a complete nightmare, it was, other than that, I wasn't really doing a lot. Right. And then at one point, I woke up and I was 28 years old. I was in my Saturn return. And I looked at my life and I had the American Dream checklist. I had done it all. I had the big house. I had the trophy husband and the dog. I didn't have the kids, which I didn't, neither of us wanted. So that was good. Um, but I had a successful business. I was a pillar of my community, volunteering at a local nonprofit. I had lots of friends and I hated my life. I hated everything about it. I had burned out on my job years before. My husband and I were in a Cold War. The dog didn't even like me, right? I was just like, she wanted him. And so it was just, I woke up one day and was like, I've been lied to about what's going to make me happy, right? The American Dream checklist was supposed to make me happy, and I was not happy in any way, shape, or form. And so I ripped it all apart. I literally leveled my life. I divorced my husband. I made him take the dog. I sold the house. I sold the business. I quit the nonprofit and I moved out of state to live with a bunch of people I met at the Renaissance Fair. And my former business partner said I ran off and joined the circus, and he was not wrong. So, I was just like, nope, I'm done. I'm like, this did not work. Start over. And that really triggered my awakening hard because the gratitude that I felt at not having to deal with his stuff, at not having to do anything I didn't want to do, ask permission for anything from him, to just wake up and just do whatever I wanted, right? And to just be able to be whoever I wanted to be and not have to answer to anybody or apologize for it. I was just like, oh, it was just, I woke up every day for a year just in great gratitude for my life. And in the process of that, it triggered a spiritual awakening for me too. I ended up going and getting my Reiki certification and my Shiatsu certification. And I started having these visions. And, I went to a spiritualist church for a while, and they do mediumship from the pulpit there. And every time the medium had messages for people, I would be like, "Oh, and this and this and this." I'd have it in my head, and I'd go find them at the coffee clutch and say, "Okay, so they said this, I got this and that and that and that for you too." And I would just like give this stuff away, and it was just everything was just opening up. I came out of the closet to my clients. I was selling real estate at the time, and I came out of the closet to my clients, and they were all like, "Oh, so cool." Right. And so one of them was big into Edgar Casey, and I ended up channeling a vacant house that I was showing them. I ended up channeling a past life where the three of us were together in a past life and on the same land that we were on that at that time. Just huge amounts of stuff just showing up, right? So it was this awakening that happened. And then I moved in with these folks in Massachusetts in what I came to call the magical house, because everybody in the house was magical, right? So they were all shamans and other practitioners of energy work. And for 4 years, we did very deep level healing work with each other. And they taught me ritual, which I had not studied as part of my childhood stuff. My mom was metaphysics, which is different than shamanic and Wicca ritual stuff. And so I went from metaphysics to that, learned the art of ritual and transformational processes within a ritual context. And we did a huge amount of work together as a group. We were a functioning magical circle for 4 years together. And then the group just sort of dissipated, and we all scattered to the winds. Like the house got sold and everybody went different places, and I ended up on walkabout for a year in my car in the US. And so basically I was going wherever spirit took me, living on $350 a month of unemployment insurance and the kindness of strangers. And so that journey was amazing. And when I came back, I was dating this guy, and that relationship became very transformative unto itself. He taught me how to be silly again, because I was so serious. I was so serious. Everything had to be serious. And so he taught me how to be silly and have fun, and to allow love in, which I didn't know how to do, right? And then I ended up then spirit started telling me it's time to be who you are. And I had no idea what that was, right? I'm like, and I just got that message over and over again. Be who you are, be who you are. I was like, I don't know who that is, right? I have no idea, because that's what we do, right? We ignore it, right? And so it took me years to really embrace my healing abilities, because it's just what I do. That only took you till I was like 40, and I'm 55. So we'll let that go.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story.
No.
It's our human condition that makes us doubt our power. The amnesia is, I'm not even, I guess, I'm not even really sure what the exact role of it is, but especially since it seems that the whole purpose is to remember. So, yes. But that's really the path that we all have to walk, is learning and acknowledging what it is that we're here to bring. And it's only natural that there's not only resistance, but sort of a blindness to it, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of it's even more subtler than denial. It's more of a not really being able to see or truly see yourself, where a lot of that transformative work allows you that reflexive 360 view where you go, oh my God, that's me.
Yes.
Yeah. And I find it interesting that you were raised with such a metaphysical background and where you ended up, because a lot of times it becomes a mirror of itself, and people who end up maybe being raised in a very religious, restrictive environment end up looking into metaphysics and esoteric and occult things to answer the questions that organized religion didn't, or the other way around. So if they're raised in an environment where many things are possible and there's an acceptance of all of those things, then they might end up rejecting it
Yes.
and looking for something else. So I think it's interesting that you didn't necessarily do the opposite. It's more just an offshoot.
I kind of did both though, because
Hmm.
my mother was not religious, but she said, look, if you want to go to youth group or church with one of your friends, because we were military, we moved all the time, right? And she said, if you want to go, I will drop you off and pick you up. Just don't make me go with you, right?
Okay.
And so I ended up in churches and youth groups with any number of different Christian denominations, right? So Lutheran, Catholic, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, Southern Baptist, Unitarian, Universalist, you name it, I probably went there, right? And Quaker, I went to a Quaker school, right? So, like, really. And so I did have the religious background as well. So I speak fluent Bible, right? It's just not the path that I stayed on because I found that the hypocrisy in the church really got to me. There wasn't a lot of practice what you preach in the churches that I went to.
Yeah.
And that became a stumbling block for me.
And you had the freedom, though, to
Yeah.
dabble,
Yes.
which is a lot of people don't necessarily in their upbringing, which
Yeah.
gave you what my father would say is a well-rounded viewpoint. So it
Yes.
let you understand all of the things that were out there and say that resonates with me, that doesn't. This aspect of this tradition does, and this doesn't. And that actually is a more free way to understand the different thought patterns that are out there.
Yeah.
I believe in the empowerment techniques in terms of I don't want to be the one to tell you what your dreams mean and that you have to come to me for the rest of your life whenever
Right.
you're stuck. I want to empower you to understand them yourself from your own subconscious so that you can take that forward. And maybe you help others, but you'll always be able to help yourself first.
Yeah.
And I like that you experimented and figured out what the best modality was to deliver your teachings. Because, again, for me, it's really guiding people on that experiential learning. It's like, look, yeah, I could write you a book about this, but it's really going to help if you can experience it for yourself. If you take your dream and apply the learnings that I have accumulated and put into my methods for yourself, because it's going to lead you back to yourself. That's the whole point, not to
So
fill your mind with ideas that aren't your own.
So I know you're interviewing me, but I have to ask you a question. So,
Yes.
how are you teaching symbology? Because that has been the hardest thing for people to get because it's its own language and is the language of spirit. And for 4 years on my podcast, every 6 weeks, we did a mythology episode to try and build people's symbolic language understandings, right? How is it that you are teaching symbology?
Really, the reason that I don't advise people look in dream dictionaries is the same reason that I don't feel that to understand messages from your intuition or your dreams that you need to consume large amounts of A to Z books. Because the messages are going to be from your dream lexicon. And
Mhm.
that dream lexicon is comprised of all of your experiences that are stored in your subconscious. And that could be from this lifetime or from previous lifetimes. And so that knowledge is already contained in that vessel, in that treasure chest, as it were. And so applying other mythological archetypal tropes onto it, I feel is only going to dilute the message that you can derive from recognizing what that associative symbology in your dream is meant to represent without additional knowledge. So it's what is that to you in your subconscious, which is going to be different for every single person.
So I agree with you that that's true. I also will say that in my experience that when people learn how to recognize the symbology and the in the mythology and in the storylines in movies and theater and stuff like that, when they start to recognize the symbology there, it becomes easier for them to access those points because they've learned how to think in a symbolic way.
Well, it then becomes part of their knowledge.
Yeah, that too. I'm an engineer brain, and so I'm always looking at how does the structure work? How does the learning work? And in my experience, what I have found is that when people study some of the symbologies, whether they're doing tarot cards or if they're doing, anything like runes, although those aren't as much symbol, but anything that has a visual associated with it that then becomes part of their symbolic lexicon, right? Then they have more vocabulary words to work with for spirit than just their own experiences. And so
Hmm.
it trains your brain to think differently because when you're communicating in symbols, you're communicating with your midbrain, not with your forebrain.
Sure. And I
Yeah,
see what you're saying.
yeah,
And for me, not having an engineering brain, coming from basically a literary background, that for me, everything is story anyway.
Hey everyone, I'm thrilled to announce that my debut novel, The Dream Haunters, A Metaphysical Mystery of Magic, is now published. It is the first book in the Witches of Maple Hollow series. The Book Life Prize calls it a highly inventive work, packed to the brim with surprise portals, ancient traditions, and dream worlds. Get your exclusive signed copy today at meganmary.com. Stop by the store while you're there and grab your dream journals, cozy blankets, pillows, candles, and more. And don't forget, it's also available in audiobook. Forward your proof of purchase from any online retailer to me, and I will send you a code to use next time you shop. I can't wait to read your reviews.
okay.
And so everything is metaphorical
I love that.
naturally.
Yes,
So for
yes.
me, I can't get away from the metaphorical. So for me, it's a very easy transition. But I see what you're saying, particularly in terms of receiving communications outside of the dream space, beyond the dream space, learning to interpret symbolic messages, whether they're coming from your spirit guides or outside intelligences. For me, it's the same as understanding your dreams, but so it's very easy and it's a transferable skill. But for other people who are like, I don't get it, and I don't even remember my dreams, and they're not at that point yet where they can understand how they even deliver their message, I can see how that would be helpful to step into that space where you're receiving information, but you don't even know you're receiving it because you're ignoring it because it's not coming through the physical senses. So you're not actually hearing it, you're not actually seeing it. So you're kind of still in that, train where you're ignoring it all unless it's
Whacking you in the
staring
head.
you in the
Yeah.
face. Yeah. One of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's valid. I think that a lot of people start off very literally with their interpretations.
Yes.
And they're like, okay, this means that. And it's like, no, the
Correct.
running water means is likely your emotions. There's different things that different elements represent, but not every time does the running water mean emotions, right? It could just be that
Right.
there's movement through the space, and you
Yep.
have to see how things interrelate, right? And
Yes.
so the metaphor is not obvious to a lot of people because they didn't get a lot of metaphor training in high school or whatever, right? So yeah. Okay, that's fascinating. I love that. I like to learn new things. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's true enough. I guess I'm guilty of being too close to my way of thinking, right? I'm like so
We
deeply
all
entrenched in it that I'm like, well, of course it is. Yeah.
yeah. So
So one of the things I did want to talk about is your unique method of sound healing the cantara, if that's how you pronounce
Yep.
it, sound healing
Cantara.
technique. I have always been fascinated by sound and frequency and vibration. And speaking of water, because we are made mostly of water, we are very susceptible to being able to change our frequency through the sounds that we expose ourselves to. And for that reason, I blend sound healing with my dream work, because I feel that is one of the best ways to shift your vibration and to integrate the messages that dreams are bringing. So please share your sound healing technique.
Yeah, so my sound healing is a little different than the average sound healing you'll find out there, because most of them are with bowls or bells or tuning forks or whatever. I use my voice. And what I do is I work with my voice to bring up and release stuck emotions and allow them to move through me and the person. So I'm using my empathic abilities to connect into the person's energy so I can find those stuck spots. And then I use the vocal sounds, which are not necessarily singing. In fact, they're rarely singing, right? So it can be, or it's rarely a pretty process, right? It's not meant to be a pretty performance. Occasionally the sound is pretty, but not often, because it's meant to be disruptive of an existing pattern. So it usually only resolves to a pretty sound when I'm then bringing the energy to a close, and then the energy is smoothing out, and therefore the pretty sound emerges from the experience and anchors in that new space of beingness, right? And so the work is remarkably successful in terms of the work that it's done. It's fabulous for clearing grief. It is, and it works whether you're doing it in person or if it's a recording. So in 2020, when everybody was dying and everybody was lamenting and grieving the loss of the life that they knew, I put out a sound healing for clearing grief. And I put that out on my podcast because I was just like, okay, everybody needs this. We'll just put it out. And people came back to me and said, this was very healing for me. And the more I listened, the more it healed. It was not a cumulative effect. And with grief, that's important because grief is a wave based process, right? It's like it comes to you in waves and you're not just like you're not one and done. So that made sense for that context. But I also do things like giving people an opportunity to step into their gifts as part of a sound healing. So like I'll clear away everything that's in the way, and then people step into their gifts and all of that. And the last sound healing, is that the last one? I don't know. One of the ones I put out in October of last year. It was very different than any other sound healing I'd ever done. Most sound healings, I come in and I clear away what needs to be cleared away, and I help people make a transition up to a new state of being, and we move through whatever needs to be moved through. But that time, and it was interesting because it was an Audacity, which is the recording platform I use, right? They put out a new version and it stopped recording after you held the note for like 2 or 3 seconds. It would just cut out and not record. And so it actually happened like 2 or 3 times as I was trying to record this, and it just stopped and stopped and stopped. And I had to stop and start over and stop and start over. And I finally just went and recorded it on Zoom. And when I went to record it on Zoom, my guides came in and said, yeah, we were stopping you because you were trying to do this the wrong way. And I'm like, but this is the way I've always done it. They're like, yeah, you're done with that now. And I'm like, fascinating. Okay, what are we doing? And they're like, you're going to come up here to where they're going to be at when they're at the end, and you're going to call them into this space. And I was floored, because what came through was this incredibly powerful energy that called people up to a new vibrational level. But when I was done with the calling them up, I found that I had extra work that I had to do because of the difference in the way in which I did it, right? So now I had to come in and help build a foundation underneath to hold them up at that space and be able to ground that in. And so it was a very different way of doing it that just channeled through the last time I did one on the podcast. So yeah, that one's hardcore.
Mhm.
But the really cool thing about it is that when I've got a bunch of people I've certified in this, and when we get together in person, you can't do this over the internet because of the lag, but when we get together in person, we do group healings on one another using all of our voices together.
I
And
was
it is,
actually going to mention that, yes, because I had a sound healing summit a few years back, and I had about 12 different sound healers, and everybody had a different approach. Like you said, some used biofield tuning, some used the bowls, and there were a few that also used their voice. And one of them actually was, and I was visualizing this as you were talking, that they would have one person in the middle, and then they would all stand in a circle around them and emote and make the sounds or sing or whatever towards them as sort of a really powerful wave, right, of healing. It's amazing how many different ways that it can be done. And it's not to
oh,
say that
yeah,
one is better than the other. They're just all so interesting. And for me, what I do in my programs is I basically make a customized meditation for people based on a dream of their choosing, where they tell me what they would like the outcome, different outcome to be of this dream. So it's kind of like a take a dream and then you make it a choose your own adventure. And then I make a guided meditation for it. And then I overlay the correct frequencies that curated will produce that feeling that they want to replace the feeling from the dream. So if they're working on a nightmare and they want to really transform that and transmute the energy, they create that secondary story, but then I walk them through it with the frequency music overlaid. And that, for me, I find is really powerful because it works subconsciously and consciously, and then it gives that suggestion to your subconscious of here's how I want it to go, and then it raises your vibration in a way that you accept that new story.
I love that. I would never have thought to put those two get together. That's amazing.
Thank
It
you.
reminds me of when I used to make transformational jewelry before I left Richmond. I had a whole kit, but I left it there when I moved here to Panama. But I that's what I would do is I would sit and talk with somebody about who they were right now and tap into their energy, and then I would tap into what they wanted their life to be like in 6 to 9 months. And then I would get a feel for that energy and I would build that energy into a necklace and have them wear it until they could live into it. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So similar
It's
idea.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really just giving them a pathway through the frequencies. It's
Yes.
introducing the frequency that they need to attain for what it is that they're hoping to achieve, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. And you could
amazing.
do that for yourself. I'm hearing people ask the question of, "Oh, how could I do that?" So you could do that for yourself. I was talking to somebody on my podcast the other day and she was talking about the idea of quantum shifting
Yes.
and the idea that you could walk into another reality of the you that already has what you want or is already doing what you want,
Yes.
and you could bring with you in the vision, you could have a crystal that you have that you've cleansed and whatever that you have in your hand when you go into the vision, and you just can anchor in the energy of that in that crystal, and then you can just keep that crystal with you, and that would be the same way to do something like that.
Yes, and that timeline shifting in the quantum is exactly what I'm talking about. Where, and it's similar to altering a dream, because if you're altering a story in your dream, you're altering the way that your brain is perceiving your reality. And then the more you do that, the more your dreams change, the more your reality changes, the more you start to really timeline shift into that alternate reality that has what it is you're visualizing or hoping for. So it's a very powerful technique, whatever modality you use. And I always encourage everyone to add dreams as another modality to the work they're already doing, because it really is just another doorway to access that. And everything does work together in a way that it complements each other and it helps to combine them, which is why I combine the sound frequencies and the dream work, because I feel that they complement each other really well.
Yeah. I remember back when I was just having that awakening, I would have these dreams, and this happened pretty consistently. I would have these dreams of being chased,
Mhm.
and it would be, the government was coming to get me, and I was running, and I was trying to take care of my mom, and all this stuff was going on, and then I would go out into the world, and somebody would be tailgating me, which is the waking dream version of being chased, right? and and so my shaman at the time that I was working with pointed this out to me, and I was like, oh, the waking dream. I didn't know anything about that. It's like in shamanism, you have the sleeping dream and the waking dream, and the waking dream is your day-to-day life, and the sleeping dream is when you're sleeping. But they're all the same in shamanism.
Yeah.
There's no difference except how you're perceiving it, right? And
Yes.
so, yeah, it was really fascinating. And I found that every time I was having some major up leveling, I would have that sort of experience of being chased. And it hasn't
Mhm.
happened for me in many years at this point, but it did happen for a period of years where that was happening.
Yes, yes. And there is a study done somewhere that revealed that something like 80% of women in their 20s have that dream.
Really?
That there is just this overwhelming theme of that. And so I think it's very profound. I think there's a lot more going on in that metaphor. For me, one of the recurring dreams that I always have is about windows and doors. And I'm always trying to close the window, make sure the door is locked, all of these, pull the curtains. It's very much a self-protective mechanism where I don't want to be seen and all these types of things. And
A portal in your house? That's what that
yeah,
makes me think of, is maybe you got a portal in your house and you're trying to hide yourself from the things coming out of the portal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of portal work. So, but that for me was, I could tell that when I was going into my spiritual awakening, that was all of the symbolism telling me to stop hiding and to really step out into what I was being called to do, which I was terrified to do. So I was like,
Yeah.
no way am I gonna
We all
do
like,
that.
yeah, I died in my past lives for a reason. Why
Yep,
would I do that again?
absolutely.
But the easy answer to that is you got to die somehow. Nobody gets off the planet alive. So,
Well, and you'll be coming back if you don't do it. So you got to just,
coming back, yeah. So,
yes. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your personal story about how you arrived to do the work that you're doing out in the world, as well as your different methods that you've invented and all of the work that you have to share with everyone. I really, really appreciate it. And tell everyone where they can find you if they want to work with you.
yeah, so it's on the screen, but if you're listening in audio form, it's kellesparta.com, Kelle. No I, no Y, no second E, just Kelle Sparta.com. And if you want to check out my podcast because you still haven't decided if you like me or not, you're welcome to check it out at Spirit Sherpa, SHERPA, Spirit Sherpa on your podcast player, or spiritsherpapodcast.com if you want to go to the website. And I've got like 400 episodes of podcast stuff. So, the lots of ways to get to know me if you want to get to know me better before you reach out to do something. And the one thing I will say is that there is a Boundaries for Empaths free e-course on my website that I highly recommend to anybody who's in the spiritual world. They're likely an empath. It will totally change your life. It is a free e-course. It's on the homepage of my website. It's the lady looking at the crystals. If you're on mobile, you got to scroll down a little bit, but on the computer, it's right up at the top. And it'll show you how to change the way you hold your energy field, and therefore allow you to make yourself sacrosanct in the world, and it will increase your sense of safety dramatically. So I highly recommend it, especially right now when it's so hard to feel safe in the world with everything that's going on. That's super huge and useful.
That's definitely very important stuff. So I'll make sure to link to your site in the show notes so that everybody can check it out. Well, thank you so much for being my guest, Kelle.
Thanks for having me, Megan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this episode? You can now send me a text message and share your experience. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Head over to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button as well to be part of my growing community. Are you ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey? Don't miss out on the new Dream Empowerment programs. Unique opportunities for you to unlock your inner wisdom, discover your authenticity, align with your higher self, and bring abundance into your life. If you'd like your dream or awakening story featured on my show, submit it today. Your dreams have the power to inspire and enlighten other women on their journey. Visit meganmary.com to find out more.